Well, greetings and thanks for joining us for another episode of Lightbulb Moments, episode number 135. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to check out past episodes of Lightbulb Moments and also check out our podcast. I'm Tom Kuhn. I'm the host and curator of Lightbulb Moments, and I'm glad you're joining us today. What is a lightbulb moment? Well, it's a moment of sudden realization, enlightenment, or inspiration. And what we like to do is to see light bulb moments turn into action, because you can't start a fire without a spark. And your light bulb moment might be a spark, but let's see what we can do with it. And certainly our guest today has taken sparks in her life and created some amazing things. At Qnity, we're here to take what's confusing, overwhelming, and complicated to a serious, a better path, a simpler path towards a higher degree of prosperity. To prosper, remember, manage your ATM, the three currencies we have in life: attention, time, and money. And thank you for spending your precious time with us, whether you're live or listening to the podcast or viewing the recording. We love hearing from you. Submit a light bulb moment of your own on the website or reach out to us in the chat. Topics you'd like to explore, guests that you'd like to see. So stay in touch. Our guest, who I'll bring to the mic and to the camera very shortly here, is Dr. Elizabeth Hubiak, who's the owner of Skinscience Medical Aesthetics. We'll bring her up very shortly here. A very, very interesting person that you're going to get to know shortly. Check out recent episodes. A few highlights. Last episode was Megan Murray, who is Senior Director of Field Operations at Ulta Beauty with 7,000 hairstylists. A great episode with Megan. One of my recent favorite episodes was a bit more of like a short master class on what's going on in social media today, with Kelly Eilers being the guest. I had a session, several sessions recently about succession planning and how it affects to the current generation, future generations, etc. Expect a lot more topics on that in the future. I love having Roderick Samuels join us. As Roderick said, students who are loved at home come to school to learn, and students who are not loved at home come to school to be loved. How true is that? Be sure to also check out Erin Kuhn's, Erin Kuhn Bonsali, excuse me, episodes of her podcast, Money 02. My light bulb moment this week will be brief, but it's really just a reflection that fall is a time that is quite busy for us at Qnity, and many of you also, as it respects to industry-related events and conferences, etc. I believe that starting towards the third week of September, I believe there were 6 events, which was a lot of events, 2 to 10. Intercoiffure, we had some events of our own up here, the Aveda Congress Festival, trip to Austin, several different things. And I always come back fueled when we get to spend time face-to-face with people. And it's really been a very enjoyable fall of events. I've gotten to see many of you in person. And we have one last event coming up, which Aaron and I will be attending next week in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's the PBA Executive Summit. And that's going to be an opportunity to connect with other beauty industry leaders on what's next, what the future looks like. It's usually represented by the major brands, the major tech companies, et cetera. This particular slide, they did choose Aaron as a poster child because she spoke last year. And we just look forward to seeing what we can learn and take back. And I'm sure I'll be sharing with you next week, because even though I will be out of town, we're still going to do light bulb moments next week. And we got a great guest, John DeJulius, joining us. And I'm sure I'll have some reflections from the PBA Summit. All right, let's bring to the mic and let's bring to the camera Dr. Hubiak, who has joined us at this early hour, given that she's out in the West Coast. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. I'm great.
Well, I don't know. There are so many different places I could start with you. All right. Because listen, we at Qnity have known of you and your success, and what a big leap you took to go from a very small practice to a much larger practice, and how that's paid off. And I can tell the listeners here that Dr. Hubiak, you have a really great business, which we'll get to in a little bit. But how does an ER doc become an owner of a medi-spa?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big story that kind of gets into my whole origins and how I got here. But I grew up, I had pretty humble beginnings. I grew up with no electricity out in a very rural area. No indoor plumbing either for a long time. We did get a phone when I was probably like 6. So we were like the technologically advanced people on the block. But I grew up really interested in medicine. We were in such a rural area, there wasn't a lot of access to medical care. So I always was reading books about, first aid in the wilderness kind of stuff. That was very interesting to me. And I also was brought up with a lot of art. My parents are kind of hippies out there living in the wilderness on the land. Art was kind of big in our house, and I did a lot of drawing, photography. And it's funny, actually, I always joke that my parents were like, "Are you sure you want to be a doctor? Like, why don't you be a photographer and artist?" It was like the opposite of anyone else, right? They really were like not sure about the whole doctor path. But yeah, so I just went that path. I had a little bit of a circuitous path to being a doctor. I was a Spanish literature major in school. But I really loved the ER. I loved procedures. I loved the excitement of it when it was exciting. But I really missed that artistic side. And the ER at the county did not provide that for me. So I started doing more medical spa stuff. That was in 2008. And and eventually left the ER to run my own business. And it's, for me, the perfect blend of medicine and art. So I found my place.
You got to connect the dot on that for me. Help me make the connection between art and medi-spa. But I will back up a little bit. In a past life, I lived with an ER doc. That is not for the faint of heart.
It is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. And by the way, I just made a decision today, just right now.
Yeah.
If we ever have a retreat, which we talked about doing retreats for either our team or, some of our clients, I'm inviting you because I want someone there that has your expertise in case something goes wrong.
Oh, yeah. I'm good to have on a desert island for sure.
Okay. How do you connect art and medi-spa? Help me on that.
Yeah, I mean, so many ways. From everything from marketing and branding, right, which I love, but really into the medical side of it. I mean, making things proportionate and symmetric and beautiful. And, I think every person has their own beauty. And so I'm not trying to make anybody different, but just really enhancing what they have. And, there's a certain eye for it. I mean, anyone can take a syringe and a needle, but not everyone can really, just like anyone can take a pencil or a paintbrush, right? But not everyone can make something, spectacular, beautiful out of it. So, I think art is an incredibly huge part of being in this sphere.
That is a really incredible way to view it. And it really is the art and science that coming together. And directly behind you, over your head, yes, I recognize that. Many people may not recognize that, but that's really the golden ratio, of which a lot of things that we see as beautiful are really, and it comes back to Fibonacci numbers and all that. And you and I, some later date, we're going to geek out on that. But the art of geometry and numbers and how they really represent beauty. And as long as I'm looking at your wall back there, I'm seeing multiple certificates there to suggest your absolute legitimacy and great skill. And then you also happen to have a 5 functions planner over there too. So
yes, all my important things are on the wall.
Well, and go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say about, the golden ratio is that I know we talked a little bit about like, well, how does that play into, what I do? But, it popped in my head, like, one of the simplest things, right, is the ratio is 1 to 1.6, right? But we even use that, like the top lip is 1 and the bottom lip should be 1.6. So even in that very literal sense, like the face even kind of follows that pattern.
How fascinating. And I know the golden ratio also applies to technical cutting of hair too. But what an
That's cool.
insight there in terms of dimensions on the face, even as you zoom in a little bit on part of the face. Staying with you personally a little bit, because and we're going to get to your business in just a moment, and there's a lot of exciting things to talk about. But you know, your upbringing, and then also your current lifestyle. Describe to our listeners your living situation.
Yeah, so I live only about 10 minutes away from my work, but we live in an unincorporated area of the city. So we have 3 acres and we're on a well, and we have goats and chickens and dogs and cats and fish and all the other animals you could think of. And so, you know, you can take the country. What is it? You can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl.
And then back to, and we're going to get to your business right now, but one more thing I can't resist. So you described growing up that sometimes you had to be homeschooled because you couldn't cross the river during a rain. Explain that for a moment.
Yeah, so, you know, driving to my house, you get off the paved road and it's about half hour down a dirt road. And back when I was a kid, that travel path included crossing a creek that didn't have a bridge. And so if it rained hard, then the creek came up and you couldn't get anywhere. So I did miss a lot of school growing up because we couldn't get across the creek when it was raining. And it is a rainier place in California. So, and homeschool, that term should be used loosely because it was more just me reading books on my own by candlelight. Because, yeah, there wasn't anything formal about staying home.
What a fascinating life story and fascinating life. So let's get into your business for a little bit. So you had one location until how long ago?
Yeah, so I had one location until right before COVID, so like 2018, early 2019. And it was a real slow kind of growth. You know, I started it with very little investment, just kind of a little bit of money out of my savings, with just the minimal things. And I was still working in the emergency room. I had a 6-month-old and then I was pregnant also. So there was just, and my husband's a firefighter, so he was gone a lot. So there was just a lot going on and I really couldn't commit that much time to it. But by word of mouth, it just kept growing and growing and growing. And I think 2018, 2019 is when I hooked up with Qnity. And I actually remember talking to Candace. I was sitting in her chair and I said, "Hey, do you know of any good business classes?" And she was like, "Oh, do I?" Yes. And she introduced me to Qnity, and you know, my work with my coach Heath really kind of gave me the confidence to like make a big step. And I think I was always a little bit afraid of success, to be honest. Like I was like, oh my God, what happens if I become successful? It's going to be so busy, and am I going to know what to do, and how do I hire more people? And it was so like having somebody kind of by my side being like, you can do this, like you need to do this, you're big and you need to expand, and was really nice. And so I did make that big leap and then got shut down. COVID came and we were shut down. So it was like the worst timing. We moved in like January of 2019. But we made it through, and bigger and stronger and better. And that's when things really took off, is when we came back from COVID. So
yeah. And so you have a location in Martinez, California, and then Pleasant Hills. Pleasant Hills has been 11 years. And then Martinez, you just opened up this year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
So altogether, you have a staff of 12, did I hear? You want to describe what your staff consists of? Because there's a lot of people that are listening in today that really don't have much of an awareness of the medi-spa model. So we're going to break it down a little bit, okay? First of all, let's talk about your staffing. How many people and what they do?
So I have obviously myself, and I, still manage a lot of the day to day, but I have a manager. And then I have two women at the front desk. I have a medical assistant, 3 estheticians, and 4 aesthetic nurses. Well, 1 PA, physician assistant, and then 3 registered nurses.
And, your revenue stream is going to come from mostly services. What about, is retail a significant part of your business or not?
On the aesthetics, well, no. I mean, we do a fair amount of retail, but percentage wise, it's pretty low.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. The medical services are, pretty high revenue. So those really drive a lot of our revenue.
Well, I didn't ask you this question, but could you give me an idea what your square footage is at the Pleasant Hills location?
Yeah. So, my first location, my square foot was about 500. And it's getting pretty good out of 500 square foot.
Yep.
And then we moved to the new place, which was about 3,500 square, or let's see, yeah, about 3,500 square feet. And then we also expanded last year into the suite next to us, so that was another like 1,000 square feet.
Well, and without allowing for the appropriate confidentiality in terms of what we share and what we don't share in this format, what I can say is you have a very high revenue per square foot, very high. And so you have built a heck of a business. And now you wear a lot of different hats. So you are the sole actual MD, is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we're going to get into some of your points of view on medi-spa and do's and don'ts in a moment here. But you're handling a lot in the business. So you're an active service provider. And then which of the functions do you personally handle?
Yeah, so I've actually stepped back from being a service provider a lot. I really only inject like once a month now. And I only take people off my wait list for those appointments. So yeah, that's helped me be able to run the business a lot. It's hard to get there. I mean, that's been in the last year or so. Yeah, so you were asking what else I do.
About the functions. So which functions do you spend the most time in? Do you lead the finance function yourself?
I do lead the finance function, mostly myself. I recently hired a bookkeeper who has been helping me, but I still kind of have to oversee all that. I would love to have someone else doing the finance. That to me is one of the most difficult functions. And then, I mean, I do a lot of it. I share it now with my manager, but I kind of have my hands in all of the different functions. Yeah,
gotcha. And which do you enjoy? It doesn't sound like finance is on the top of your list. The marketing piece, do you enjoy?
I love the marketing piece. Yes, I enjoy that, and the education I enjoy. So yeah, those are kind of my favorite.
And tell us a little bit about your manager and what type of skill set she has. Is it a she? Okay.
Yeah. So she actually started as my front desk pre-COVID. When COVID happened, she's actually an esthetician. She couldn't work. And so, I called her up and said, hey, do you want to work for me full time? Run everything, help me out. And she was like, sure. So she's kind of, stepped up in her responsibilities over time. But, she had her own business, so she understands that side of it. And she's just super helpful, really important part of my business, and helps me with kind of all the functions also.
So let's talk about the medi-spa industry. And you shared some numbers, and certainly since when you got in the space to now, it's been a very fast growing. You want to break down the numbers a little bit in terms of billions before and after?
Yeah, well, I actually, on the way here, I was like, when was the first medi-spa opened? And actually 1998. So it's a very young industry, right? I mean, I opened it 10 years after the very first one. So I feel like I got it pretty early also. But yeah, when I was looking at the numbers, you know, right now it's about a $16 billion industry. And they expect by 2030 for that to be almost 50 billion. So it's definitely like, you know, really rapidly growing and has a lot of, you know, there's a lot of space for people to get into the industry and grow.
Very high growth. And, but it's very, very different from the other, you know, a normal salon and spa. Certainly there's the element of touch that consists in both, but you start, you know, you move into a whole nother space when you go into medi-spa, hence the first word, medical. And you take the medical part of it very seriously. And, you know, this is really a message to those that are either thinking about getting into the space of medi-spa, whether it's taking some of your space and carving it out and partnering. So let's talk a little bit about really how to properly approach the medi-spa business to make sure that you keep to the spirit and the law.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's something I really like to explain to people is that at the end of the day, you know, we call it medi-spa or medical aesthetics, but it's a medical office. It's a doctor's office, and it's a doctor's office where you can come and enjoy your, you know, your visit and feel more relaxed, and you know, but at the end of the day, it is a doctor's office, and there's a lot of laws around that and who can own it and who can inject. And so, you know, we see places pop up that are questionable on following the law. You know, for the most part, most of the services we do are pretty safe, but you know, there are parts of it that can really go wrong. You know, I was talking to you the other day about injecting fillers. There's always risk of blindness, skin necrosis, bad outcomes, wrong filler, allergic reactions, hypersensitivity, lasers, there's laser burns. You know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And so in medical aesthetics, you definitely, you know, if you're going to have something done, you want to really check the credentials, make sure they're on the up and up. If you're thinking of opening a space, you know, it's really obviously best if you're a medical professional, but if you're not and you're pairing with someone, you really want to check their credentials, their safety, their training, and you really want to make sure that whoever, you know, is the medical director. So a medical spa needs to have a medical director, which is normally a physician, who owns the majority share. And they're also the ones that oversee everything and the protocols and are there if there's a complication. So it's really important you have someone who knows what they're doing and is available to be the medical director, because if you have a complication, seconds and minutes matter. So you want somebody who's right there that can help you out.
You just described a situation that you encountered where it was another nearby clinic and there was not access to the medical director. So you got pulled in. Do you want to talk about that for a moment?
Yeah. So this happened with a nurse in my community who, she's an excellent provider, you know, and really it can happen to anyone. She was doing it, you know, the safest way that you can do it. But she recognized immediately while she was injecting that there was a complication, and that she had gotten filler into an artery and it was blocking oxygen to the tissue. And she could not get a hold of her medical director. And when she did, he was kind of far away and he said he needed to finish clinic. And so she was calling around, just, you know, trying to find someone that could help her. And she knew me from a training that had happened at my office, and she knew I had an ultrasound. And so I actually got a call at home from my front desk saying, you know, there's this nurse who's just, you know, she's very worried. She's trying to get a hold of someone. Is there any way you can help her? And so I came in from home and spent the whole day, the next day, and multiple days following up, using ultrasound to reverse the filler. You know, the patient ended up doing well, but, you know, that's why it's important to have somebody who can help you. I mean, she shouldn't have had to call around to try to find someone in the community.
Yeah. I want to switch gears for a little bit. And also, I know you have a meeting you're going to be attending to. So I want to make sure that we end with plenty of transition time for you. But I want to go to how we came to know you, or actually how Candace Gliotto came to know you. And I think Candace has joined us this morning. So
Yeah, Candace always has a different story than I do, so we'll see what she has to say.
I already know what she said. But to sort of set the stage for this, you used the word that you were a strategic client of Candace.
Yeah.
So run with this one.
Okay. Well, from my perspective, so I live in Martinez, where Candace lives and has her salon, and I had often heard of her, just her salon and just her being a big part of the community. And I knew that she was probably someone to really get to know, which, I'm so glad I did. But I decided that the best way for me to meet her would just be to get a hair appointment with her. So I called in and I scheduled with her. And Candace's side of the story is that I stretched the truth and said that I was a previous client, which I don't think is true, but maybe I was just so confident that I needed to see Candace that they assumed I had seen her before. I don't know. But yeah, so that's how I met Candace.
She says in the chat that you're going to have a lifelong banter on this.
Yeah.
And I do want to go with the story here that both of you shared about a little snafu while in the salon. So I'm sure Candace wouldn't mind that.
Oh yeah, it was it was a funny story. It was a very long appointment, so I guess we really got to know each other, which was good. But by the end, it must have been 9:30, 10 o'clock. I don't know. It seemed really late. And I was very ready to go home. And she had done balayage. I mean, it was just a long appointment. I was almost done. And she sprayed my hair with what I think was like, she would know better, but like a detangling spray or something. And then she goes to brush my hair and like, she can't even get the comb through it. It's just so tangled and kind of crunchy. And she's like, is your hair always like this? And I'm like, no, usually I just run a finger through it. I don't even have to brush it. It's so fine. And she's like, what is going on? And then she takes off the bottle top and she smells it. And she realizes that someone had refilled every detangler bottle with hairspray. Oops. And she said, well, we're going to have to wash your hair again. I said, can't I just go home like this? And she was like, no.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes here, but back to the medi-spa and the medi-spa model. And, I think we've established that it's, I wouldn't call it in its infancy, but it certainly is high growth. And, I'm thinking of situations, doctor, where someone might have a pretty large space and they're tempted to say, okay, got this large space because it's non-functioning. It was for education. We don't need it for education. And how would you go about doing that? I mean, if you were a salon owner and you had the extra space, you were interested in getting in the field, you gave us a lot of cautions, but how do you go forward?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple ways to do it. One is hair and medi-spa, really have a nice symbiotic relationship. I mean, definitely we can cross promote, it's similar clientele. So, one way would be for them to rent a room in their space if they wanted to do that to a medical provider. If somebody really felt like they wanted to actually, be a part of this medical spa, the best way, so there's a couple ways to do it. So you can do like a MSO that owns the med spa, and one of the owners is a physician, and then there can be other owners that are non-medical.
MSO stands for what?
Management service organization or something similar to that. So
okay.
Yeah, so it's basically, that's how hospitals run, right? It's not doctors running hospitals. It's the management system that then, the doctors work for. So you can structure it like that, and that's just talking to a lawyer and getting that set up the correct way. But definitely, pairing with a doctor who's going to be involved, I think is super important, because lately there's been a lot of stuff coming out where there's just like a medical director in a box. Basically, you pay a monthly fee, they sign charts for you, but they're not there to help educate or if there's a complication or anything like that. So I do think if you're going to get into this space, like find somebody who's, you know, medical, a physician or something who's really interested in it. I'll give you a little hint. Doctors are super burned out right now in the hospital. So there's probably a lot who are looking to also, you know, transition into private practice. So
stay there a minute.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean. And I'm going to share within my own family. So I have a brother-in-law who's an orthopedic surgeon, and he was part of a practice where he was an owner in the practice and a practitioner. And then they sold to, I think it was Northwestern University in Chicago area. And then someone bought it from Northwestern. So now he's 2 steps away from what he started out. So now he basically works for private equity.
Yeah.
And so you're saying there's a lot of doctors that might be intrigued by an entrepreneurial opportunity like this.
Yes, for sure.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. That's a good light bulb moment right there.
Yeah.
Probably a good place to end too, so I can give you a little transition time to get on what's next for you. Let's everybody give Dr. Hubiak a virtual round of applause here. I should have had you on as a guest a very long time ago. I don't know why. It just, you're very humble and you like to kind of stay below the radar, but you are a powerhouse woman and a very interesting person. All you have to do is look at the wall behind you to see that. So anyway, you will be an official member of the Brain Trust, your $1 million light bulb, and we'll have to have you back on as a guest. And we've talked a little bit about how we can help some more medi-spas, and we'll be in some conversations with you in that in the future too. So
yeah, I think that would be great. And, you know, I'm happy if people have questions, they want to reach out, or if they want to send questions for our next episode, part 2.
All right,
that'd be
great.
Thanks so much, Tom. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. Thanks everybody else, whether we're watching this live or listening to the recording or watching the recording. We will see you in a future episode. What a great guest. And thanks for joining me today. Take care. Bye.